Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you, Merrill. My name is Jack, and I'm an alcoholic. I was told that the atmosphere at this meeting tonight would be electric, and I can feel the vibes coming right up through the tables and up through the floor. It really is a tremendous experience and a thrill to be here with you tonight. It's a privilege and an honour, and the pleasure will come when I sit down in approximately 15 minutes. I have a couple of things to say before I go any further. I would like to thank the New York Intergroup and the dinner committee for giving me this privilege tonight. The speakers met with the dinner committee a couple of nights ago just to be briefed on what would take place and what would happen, etc. And in a brief conversation with one of the committee, who shall remain nameless, we touched on the point that it's a kind of nerve-wracking experience to do something like this. And he did say to me, you can dry up, but for Pete's sake, don't throw up. So I'll try to do neither. As Merrill said, I'm one of the delegates representing Great Britain at this World Service meeting. And as you have probably gathered already, I was not educated at Oxford. I was born and raised in Glasgow, Scotland. And if ever you visit our city, I can assure you of a very warm Scottish AA welcome. I have one or two other friends out there, and they know who I'm talking about. We are not only friends, but we are colleagues in the work that we do in the fellowship. And they've been saying little prayers for me because of having to speak here this evening. May I thank you and assure you that your prayers are working. This is a very happy occasion for all of us tonight. An occasion of celebration. An occasion of showing our gratitude. But I have to know where I am at and what I am at in my life today as a recovering alcoholic. And I have always got something to relate to. And I would like to take you back to a Monday morning in September 1965, when after 5 years approximately of alcoholic drinking, where I had gone from drinking large Bacardis and Cokes in lounge bars to drinking cheap wine in public parks and in public toilets. Having gone from being the director of a small company, I had now been reduced to being unemployable. Nobody who knew me or knew of me would employ me. On a Saturday morning in September, I was passing my doctor's office. I had no intention of going there. But something took me up the stairs. I went into his office. He said, "What can I do for you, Jack?" I said, "I can't stop drinking." I started to cry and everything came out. And he said, "I have a friend in a hospital, a doctor friend, who is interested in people like you. I will have you admitted to hospital on Monday morning." My life was an absolute disaster, a shambles. I had become a zombie of a human being. And on the Monday morning, and this is the day that I have never forgotten, and as I speak to you now, it's as if it was last Monday. My brother-in-law and my father came for me in the car to take me to this hospital around 20 miles away. They both sat in the front seat. I sat in the back. And the thoughts that were going through my mind on this journey, and it was another journey into the unknown. I did not know what kind of hospital I was going to. I did not know if there were bars on the ward and on the windows. I did not know how long I was going to be in hospital. And the saddest thing of all was that I didn't care anymore. My alcoholism had taken away the ability to earn a livelihood. It had taken away material possessions. It had taken away my self-respect. And as I sat in that car that morning, I realized that there was not much left for alcohol to take, except maybe my life. But however, I've been a very, very fortunate person, even in my drinking days, which I said only took place over a comparatively short period, alcoholic drinking period of 5 years. I was taken into a medical ward of a general hospital because the doctor was interested in people like me. He had experience in treating alcoholics. I don't know how great his experience was in dealing with alcoholics, but I know how he treated alcoholics. Physically, I was fairly well under the circumstances. Although I was still living at home, I was suffering from malnutrition. And I was given a series of injections simply to simulate an appetite. And his way of treating alcoholics, or people like me, was to send for the local AA group. And 2 members of the local AA group came after 2 weeks, visited me in hospital, and took me to my first AA meeting. I was ashamed to be an alcoholic. But when I was taken into the room, the little guy who took me there simply let me go when we entered the room, and I mixed with the other members. There were 2 men with collars, white collars. I assumed that they were both priests. And during that meeting, and I don't remember much of what was said, the shame of being an alcoholic left me. For whatever reason, I have always respected men of the cloth. And I thought, if they can sit here at an AA meeting with their collars on, why should I feel shame? One of them spoke to me after the meeting. One was elderly and one was young. It was the older one who spoke to me. He said, I am a bishop and I travel 30 miles to this meeting every week. Keep coming back. And I did keep coming back. I kept going to meetings like everyone else, not fully understanding what was being said, but being carried along by the example of others. And there was another magic day in my life, and I can take no credit for this because I was asleep when it took place. But I wakened up one morning with a strong desire just to be sober. I now wanted to be sober, and I wanted to go to the meetings. And I kept going. And if there is a simple answer as to how AA works, the only one I know is keep coming to the meetings. And I met someone, and we always meet someone along the road. And he was an older member, and he spoke to me, and he had sensed that although I was sober, nothing really was happening in my life, in my opinion. I was just sober. And he said to me, and again I will repeat something that you've all no doubt heard. He said, Jack, if you stay away from one drink, one day at a time, things will happen to you which are beyond your wildest dreams. I didn't disbelieve him. I just didn't understand. But I kept coming to meetings, and things happened to me beyond my wildest dreams. Some of them have been personal experiences. When I was drinking, like many of us, I finished up in places I was ashamed to be in. Sobriety and this fellowship has taken me on occasion to places where I would never, ever have expected to have been invited. And that's, there are the things that can happen to us. As I say, it's gone on and on and on. Things happening to me beyond my wildest dreams. And, I could share for a long, long time on such things. But this week, as a World Service Meeting Delegate, I have had the opportunity and the privilege of being with delegates and sharing with delegates from all corners of this earth. That has been an emotional experience. Right now, like I'm sure all of them, physically and mentally, I'm completely drained. I just want to go home and get my feet up and let everything flow away from me for a couple of days. That will go away in a couple of days. What will stay with me are the emotional experiences. And I was particularly gratified to make special friends with the delegates from Argentina. This was very important to me. Today we were taken to Stepping Stones, and that's the first time I've been there. And I went through an emotional experience again there today, because I was in the past. I was in the living past. I was present in a home to which I think many of us owe our lives for some of the things that were born in that home. And there is the emotional experience of the now, the here and the now. This is a one-off for me. I am unlikely to be in New York again, and I am unlikely to be at this dinner again. So this is an experience that I will take with me and keep forever. Finally, I would like to quote something for you. It's from the language of the heart. I won't quote the complete paragraph. The last sentence says it all, and again, I'm sure most of you have heard it. It says, "Beyond the circle of my horizon lies the one world of AA, and I am truly grateful to be a part of that one world of AA." I thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Like many times in AA, they told me that I would also travel to places that was beyond my wildest dreams. I hit bottom on 42nd Street, and for me, this is a long, long way and beyond ever a wildest dream of the Port Authority bathrooms, of the peep shows and so forth that I drank in. For that, I am very grateful to all of you. And to visit Great Britain, to be there for a conference, was also something that was always, as a drunk, I'm going to do it tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to be different. Tomorrow I'm going to travel here. Tomorrow I'm going to purchase this. Tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. Since I've been sober, all those tomorrows have turned into todays as long as I've put in the footwork. And again, I want to thank Jack. Being sober, my sponsor had told me to make some plans and goals for myself. And one of the things that I had decided to do, which again was always my drunken stupor of tomorrow I'm going to do it, is to travel to different places throughout the world and go to AA meetings and to see different places in each country that is a representative of that country. Our next World Service Delegate had a dream and a goal when she came to New York City to visit Our Lady, as she puts it, the Statue of Liberty. To her, that represents New York. When she was sharing that with me, like Jack had said, we had dinner the other night, it put that starry-eyed vision into a fellow New Yorker of what New York and what the Statue of Liberty must have looked like to someone from New Zealand. That is what I hope that I look like to people from other countries when I visit their country and visit something that's very important to them. From New Zealand, I'd like to bring up Elsie T, the World Service Delegate.
Okay. My name is Elsie. I'm a grateful alcoholic. And I have no shoes on. My knees are going so fast, it's the one you can't hear them. I have a hanky, it'll probably be in shreds by the time I finish. Oh dear. It's going to be the longest 15 minutes of my life. My home group is the Geyserland group of Rotorua, New Zealand. So now you know who I am, what I am, and where I truly belong. And I say this in all sincerity. My home group is not world famous. But it truly is the most wonderful group in the world. That group gave to me that precious gift that so many of us have experienced. It gave me my first day of sobriety. And for that I am so grateful. I didn't really want it. I'm grateful now. I didn't even want to be there. But I also didn't want to be where I'd been. It was a terrible, frightening place where I'd come from. And alcohol took me to depths that I don't believe any woman should have to go, especially a woman with children, and I had 6 children. And I had a practicing alcoholic for a husband. And I believe that some people, especially some women, are destined to know only one great love of a lifetime. And he was my great love of a lifetime. And I love that man. And we ended up hating each other and loving each other and being gentle and kind with each other and being brutal and violent with each other. This is what alcohol did to us. And my children grew up in this environment. So when my children started to drink, that's how they drank, the way my husband and I drank. And I thought everybody drank like that. I didn't know you could have 1 or 2 and go home. I had several before I got there. I was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. And sometimes I got swept out with the ashtrays. But you know, I didn't know I was unwell. I didn't know I had a disease. And I think each of us have a turning point in our lives My turning point came with this great love of my life, died tragically, and I went downhill so fast, you just couldn't see me for dust, and I didn't want to be where I was going, and I didn't know how else to get out of there. And I had never ever heard of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know it existed, I didn't know what it was, but I came out of a 5-day blackout in my kitchen one day at 3 in the morning, day, night, no difference. And I picked up the book, our telephone book, and I looked in the yellow pages. And I looked for Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd never heard of you. I'd never heard of it. So I believe that God, as I understand Him, had been nursing me along and bringing me to this point of surrender, because I didn't know I did it. I didn't know what I was doing. And He brought to me a woman who was so different from me, it was unbelievable. You know, I rang up on the phone and she answered and she told me about herself over the phone. And for the first time for many, many years, I had that glimmer of hope that maybe there was a way out for me. And I was so frightened that she would put that phone down, because all of a sudden it was like a lifeline, a safety belt, and I was frightened if she hung up I might never have the courage to do this again. And so she talked to me for 5 hours on the phone. And finally, when she got me steady enough, she said to me, "Where do you live?" And I told her. And she lived just around the corner from me. And I didn't know she lived there. And I didn't even know where I lived sometimes. So she said to me, "Hold on to that phone. Just hold on and I'll be there." And I sat there holding on to this phone. Wow, the phone in this hand and a glass of whiskey in that hand, and I didn't know which to use. And I was just like this. But you know, I realized that a miracle had happened to me, because from the minute I picked that phone up, that glass remained undrunk. And I was never to drink again from that moment. And she walked into my house, and she was blonde, blue-eyed, white-skinned, immaculately groomed. And I thought, oh my God, Bible bangers. I bet a lot of you thought that the first time. But you know, she did for me what I have tried to do since I have been in Alcoholics Anonymous. She carried this message of recovery and hope to me. And she gave me something that I'd never known to do for me. She gave me that first day of sobriety. And she sat with me for the next 3 days, because there was only 2 meetings in my hometown when I first came to the fellowship. And she sat with me all those days. And she rang members up, and they came down and they sat with me while I shook and did all those crazy things that we do when we get dry. And then I attended my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was an eye-opener, because they were mostly men, and her and I were the only women. I thought, wow, you know, because I didn't have grey hair then, I was very red-headed. And I was very sick. And so I made mistakes. Mistakes that have become my living experience, that I now share with the women of Alcoholics Anonymous when they come through the door with their red hair. Nothing I have ever done in Alcoholics Anonymous has been wasted. You know, that's how we learn by experiences, and some of them are pretty rough. Pretty rough. And if you think that AA in New Zealand is any different, it's not. I was told the same thing. Don't drink, go to meetings, you'll be okay. And no matter what problem I had, it was still the same thing. Don't drink, go to meetings, you'll be okay. And I did that. And I hung in there. And I'd like to tell you that it was easy, but it wasn't. It was terribly painful. And some days I couldn't make it through without the fellowship, because I had no program. I had no program. I just had fellowship. And it was the fellowship that got me through each day. Sometimes those days were broken down into minutes. And I did some really crazy things in those early days to stop myself from drinking. I didn't want to go back there anymore. I'd had a vision of what my life could be like in Alcoholics Anonymous, the vision that you gave me. And I began to work and to live our 12-step program of recovery and live our 12 traditions and live our 12 concepts for world service. Because this is a living program. And action for me is love. Action for me is recovery. Action for me is service. And being here, looking out at all of you tonight, my heart is so full. And I promised myself I would not weep tonight because I'm wearing mascara. And I'm tired of looking like a panda. If I don't watch this time, he's going to tug at my dress. I have time. Okay. But you know, I can never ever repay Alcoholics Anonymous what it has given me today. Yesterday we were at dinner and one of your dedicated servants from General Service Office asked me what was the highlight of this World Service meeting in New York. And there were many, many highlights because there's many, many experiences that were shared. You have some tremendous servants in this fellowship, and they give of their all to ensure that our message continues to be carried. And I thought about it for a minute, and it only took a minute, and I said to her, yes, I have my highlight for this World Service meeting. On Friday, we were guests of your General Service Office at their Friday meeting from 11 to 12. And we were nearly all there, all the World Service members, the General Service staff, your trustees, we're all there. And we're all sharing, we're asked to share, and we just identified and it was wonderful, and I felt such a part of this great fellowship, this worldwide fellowship, and I saw what the dream that Bill Wilson had for us. Oops, a daisy. That Bill W. had for us. I told you I'd make mistakes. And just about towards the end of the meeting, there was a chap there and he was asked to share. And he identified himself and he said, I have been sober for 20 hours. And for me, that was the highlight of the World Service meeting here in New York, because that reminded me of why we were here, why we do the things we do, why we come to New York and travel around the world, to ensure that our message does reach those far corners, so that when there is another guy like that somewhere in my country, in your country, in a country that hasn't even heard of AA yet, that the hand of AA will be there. And for that we are all responsible. All of us. I have 2 sons who've been in the program now for 9 years. And 1 8 years. I have 3 daughter-in-laws who are in Al-Anon. And I have 17 grandchildren. And I don't know where my grandchildren are going to end up in this world. The world is shrinking. And my grandchildren could end up in India, Sri Lanka. I don't know where they're going to go. But I want the hand of Alcoholics Anonymous to be there wherever they end up. And for that we're all responsible. And I thank you for your lives and for mine.
Thank you very much, Elsie. I'm also standing up here barefoot. It's a lot more humbling, let me tell you. I also know about this fellowship of the program. Our next speaker is a fellow New Yorker, and I learned his name from the fellowship of AA. His name got carried from one person to the next person to the next person to the next person about helping another alcoholic. I am very happy to say that he's helped a lot of people in my own area, Forest Hills. And I'm happy also to say that being a New Yorker, that this fellowship, as we all know, you don't do anything that you don't want everyone to find out about. They say that the world is a very small place. Well, the fellowship of AA is even smaller. So good news about somebody who sponsors, that has a sponsor, and so on and so forth. You find out about these people very quickly. And before I bring up Tim Kay, I'd like to say that this meeting is being taped tonight. Tapes will be available outside of the Grand Ballroom, probably around 10:30, 11 o'clock. If you're not going to stay around for the dancing, there will be an order form. It is not being taped by Intergroup or by AA. It is being taped independently, and we are not making a profit on it. The tapes are available for you, for stocking stuffers for Christmas, for people who aren't here, but the tapes will be available. Without any further ado, I'd like to bring up Tim Kay from the Soho Group of New York.
Brought my drink. My name's Tim Kay. I'm a recovering alcoholic. Hi, everybody. I'm here because I don't want to drink. My sponsor's here. He made me come. When they first asked me, I thought about this. I get confused real easy. I'm one of those guys who drank 1 pint too many. And when I was asked if I'd be interested in speaking, I said, well, let me discuss this with my sponsor first, because this kind of stuff scares me. And so I called him up, and I said, Bob, I'm not quite sure what this thing is all about. I like to grab the newcomer by the throat and drag him around the meetings, and I like the red-eyed devils who are shaking like mad. That's where I belong. That's what I like. And he said to me, I said, do I have to do this? And he said, Tim, there might be one drunk out there who you can touch. And so that's why I'm here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. I've learned in my short time in Alcoholics Anonymous that the thing that I carry here best is what I am not what I am. It isn't my strong points that are the great service, the thing that I use for service here. It's those things that I was not, and my ability to be honest with you and about that. One of my sponsees called one of my home group members who moved to Chicago recently. He's now a member of group number 7, the 7th AA meeting in America, in the world, I guess. And he asked that man, Steve A., if he had any advice for me. And he said, tell him, try not to drink. So they keep it simple for me, lest I start thinking too much. I better look at this watch. I told them I could talk for 5 hours, no problem, and they all started to panic. So, and I promised them I'd keep it to 15. I can't get my watch undone because my hands are shaking. God, you're beautiful. Look at y'all. God, they don't look like drunks to me. I think I was born to have my head resting on a curb someplace. So when you put me in a tuxedo, it's unnatural. I love it, but it's unnatural. And I feel real good tonight. I'm shaking a little bit, but I shake normally all the time anyways. It's all right. On May 25th, 1977, God decided that it was time that I get sober. I think I've got the least amount of sobriety here, one day at a time. But I had the last couple of years of my drinking. Every morning I woke up, my eyes open like rusty Venetian blinds, and my mouth automatically said, "Oh no," because I was alive one more day. And I did not want to be alive one more day. It just hurt too much. I tell a couple of stories that I like to tell for me. I didn't look at my watch. It's okay. I used to wake up in the morning and I always swore I wasn't going to drink in the morning. I would always wind up drunk by dinner time. And this one morning I woke up, I was real sick. My belly was all swollen. I was always nauseated. I knew I was going to be sick all day long. And I used to wake up, there'd be one contact lens in, one shoe on, a coat, and there'd be mustard all over here, and I don't know where I've been for the last 3 days. And I'd throw my feet off the edge of the bed, and I'd do this little Elkie shuffle that I used to do so I didn't, get sick all over my house. And I went down the stairs, and I went into my bathroom because I was awfully ill. And I looked in the mirror, and I put toothpaste on my toothbrush, and I looked up there, and I put it down. I couldn't stand it. And I walked into my living room, and I stood there, and I couldn't stand it. And I walked over to my radio and turned on the radio, and I couldn't stand the music, so I turned it off. And I walked over to the TV set, and I turned it on, and I couldn't stand it, so I turned it off. And I walked over to the front door, and I opened the front door, and I looked out, and it was a nice spring day, and I couldn't stand it because everybody was having fun, and I was dying inside. So I closed the door, and I went back inside the room, and I stopped, and I stood there, and the wall started to scream at me. And I knew I was in real deep trouble. I got sober at 22 years old. It's a pretty young story, but I earned my seat here. I slept under bridges coast to coast in America on my Jack Kerouac trips. I was certain I was destined to be somebody, like a writer or something. When I was hoboing in Berkeley, California, I remember sitting on a curb. At the time, I was covered with this poison oak. I had been mountain climbing, that's what I called it, and I was lowering myself down these mountains by these little trees. These little trees turned out to be poison oak, and I wound up coming down with this case over my whole body so that, you know how you look when you're sitting on a curb for a while, you're kind of getting all funky, and I hadn't washed in I don't know how long, and I'd straighten my arm, my skin would crack, and I just don't look very good. And I was getting my clothes out of a St. Vincent de Paul dumpster things, And I was sitting there on the curb in Berkeley, California. I wanted to be an intellectual type, and I knew this was a big kind of university town full of the finest minds in the world. And I was sitting on this curb thinking, look at all these plastic people, if they could only be like me. And it's funny, I'm 33 years old now. I started drinking when I was 12, and I'm sober. I guess that makes it 11 years now. And so 1/3 of my life was spent getting ready for AA. Just getting ready for drinking, I guess. And then 1/3 was spent drinking, getting ready for AA. And then 1/3 has been working around in AA. And anyways, when I first got here, that one day, May 25th, 1977, it was D-Day. I've been thinking about death all my life, most of my life. Once I started drinking, I started thinking about dying. And the last couple of years I thought about it full-time serious. I was full-time lonely, full-time misunderstood, and I just was a square peg in a round hole in every situation. My drinking buddies and everything. The nature of my disease is self-deception and denial. I hated everybody because nobody understood. I hated everybody because I blamed everybody for the way I was. If you were raised poor, you would drink too. If you were raised in Detroit, you would have drank too. If you were raised without a dad, you would have drank too. That goes on and on and on and on and on. And I didn't know that was what my alcoholism was. Just the excuse-making, the self-deception and denial, because there's lots of people with my same circumstances who have not found it necessary to drink. Anyways, this one D-Day for me, I woke up and it was time. I was going to kill myself. It was more serious than any other day. I don't know what the difference was, but God called, I guess. And I called up this, I thought I was crazy, and I called up a shrink. And the shrink, I said, I'm going to kill myself. I need some help. And the shrink said, come on in. And I went on in there, and for 1 hour sitting with this guy, I tried not to cry, throw up, or anything, any of those bodily functions. I couldn't make eye contact. And for 1 hour, I spent it with him. And at the end of that 1 hour, he looked at me and he said, kid, I can't do anything for you till you quit drinking. And he said, but I got a guy here for you. So he sent me across this college town. I was in college at the time, kind of. And he sent me over to this substance abuse program. And this substance abuse guy was used to seeing college punks who drank a little bit too much on weekends and maybe broke some windows or something. And I walked in the door, the guy went, I'm not a counselor. And I thought, I'm a dead piece of meat here, I guess that's more of a joke. I didn't think anything. I was beyond thinking at this point. And he said, I got a guy who knows how not to drink. And I thought, great, finally, some big muckety-muck, some real big shot, finally. And he dialed this number up like this, and he leans across his desk, and he says, here. And he says, Chris, I got one for you. Then he gives me the phone. And I go, oh, yeah. So I take this phone. I don't know how to talk to another human being, without having any booze in me. So this guy said, my name's Chris Sam. I'm a recovering alcoholic. Come on over. I'll help you out a little bit. And we sat down and talked, and Chris told me about his drinking story. He came in when he was 25, and he was 5 years sober at the time. Chris had been one of the worst drunks I had ever heard of. The worst. As a young man, this guy had been stitched up more times than, a fancy dress with the, sewing machine. And he had his nose broken so many times he had to put in a plastic one. And the day that they did that, he went out and got drunk, and somebody busted it again, and he had to fix it himself. One of those kinds of guys. When he was in the army to stay out of prison, he went to Amsterdam, he got drunk, he fell in a construction pit and was so busted up they had to fly him out by helicopter. Okay, you got the guy. And he's buying me lunch now, serving, I talk about Chris M. all the time because he is the man who delivered God to me. He was God to me. His sponsor used to have these coats. This old black man with a cut-off index finger. And whenever he talked to you, he used to point at you with his cut-off index finger. And you always were scared of the guy. And he had this coat. He used to get these coats down in this downtown South Bend, Indiana. He used to open up, and the label in his coat said, one man tells another. That was the label of the coat. So, anyways, the long and the short of it was Chris was the worst drunk I'd ever met. And his stories went on. The first day out of the service, he bought a brand new Corvette and totaled it on a bridge abutment first day. And, just on and on and on. And he was telling me these stories. And being the drunk that I am, ready to die this day, not having had a drink yet, I would have preferred anything to living. I started to get on the edge of my seat. And I matched him story for story, talking about, yeah, you fell in that pit. Well, I used to jump out of speeding cars. And, sometimes I'd go to a bar and I'd walk up to your table and drink your drink and then eat your glass. Yeah, that's nothing. I used to light my house on fire. So, that's incredible. What a disease that here you are on your last day on this planet and you're having a BS contest with some complete stranger. That's the nature of the disease, self-deception and denial. On my deathbed, don't outdo me. Needless to say, this guy told me more stories and more stories. I can't tell you most of them because they told me not to curse too much. And this guy's got a wild story, and they're all vulgar because we drank vulgarly. And anyways, he was telling this story, and I was matching him story for story, and it came down to the last thing he said. He said, and crying in the shower is the loneliest hell in the whole world. And for the first time in my life, somebody knew who I was. I cried in the shower 1 million times. I used to bash my head against the wall and say, God, take me now. And he said, I'm going to meet you at quarter to 8 for the AA meeting at the jail. Yeah, great. And that night at 7:30, I hadn't had a drink yet. And I hadn't been that sober that long in a long time. And at 7:30 that night, I was getting ready to be gone because I don't know what it was like to sit in the car with another human being not drunk. And at 7:30, I looked out my window, and he got there early. There's a lot of God in that. I'm not a big hubbubber on the coincidences and stuff, but I think he was a bad drunk and he knew what I was like and he wanted to carry God's message, and he took me to my first AA meeting and I fit right away. It was the place I wanted to be all my life. They were not very sensitive to me. They never were patient with me. They called me, look at who I am. Now I want you to know, when I came in 22 years old, I knew everything, even though I was dying, and they called me sport model. Insensitive brutes. Needless to say, they taught me what I did not know, and that was lots. I still don't know a lot. The only time I feel like I'm doing God's will today is when I'm telling them what I read in a book and what they told me, and I make it my business today to go around chasing newcomers so that I don't have to drink. I sit around looking at all of us all dressed up so beautiful, and this is miraculous. If this was 100 years ago right now, I would probably, it's Saturday night, I would be drunk, probably face down in a wagon rut someplace. Right? Anyways, God's been merciful for me. I'm here because I'm not all there. I got alcoholism, not alcoholism. I know why I'm here. I remember my last drunk, and it's a privilege to be here, and I did the best I can, and I don't think I lied. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tim. And I know that you'll go on to help suffering alcoholics for years to come. Well, before I close, I'd like to say that for myself, if it wasn't for all of you, I would not be sober today. Like Elsie had said, and as all the delegates know, and everybody here who's in the program of AA, if it wasn't for another suffering, covering AA member, we wouldn't have today. I hope that you stay to enjoy the Park Swing Orchestra in this ballroom at around 10:30, and there will be a DJ in the Mercury Ballroom right down the hall on this floor as well at 10:30. The next person who I'm going to bring up here who's going to deliver the benediction is one of the two people in my life who are directly responsible for me finding Alcoholics Anonymous. The Reverend Rodney Kay is one of the people that I love more than just about anybody in this room tonight. He is also my employer and has been my employer for the years that I've been sober, for 3 years before I even came into this program. I work 2 blocks away from 42nd Street. It was real easy for me to find it when I started this job. And him, and I must mention Richard's name, who is also another employer, kept me on shuffling papers while I was in a drunken stupor, messed up on everything from A to Z, just waiting for me to bottom out. They didn't know what to do with me. I was 19 years old. And Rodney, being in the program, 12-stepped me into Alcoholics Anonymous. Like Elsie, I didn't want to go. It was every other problem under the sun. It was my parents. It was my boyfriend. It was because I didn't do this, this, and this. It couldn't possibly be my drinking. I was not willing to admit that I was a drunk. I couldn't be. I was too young. I was still out having a good time. My life was beyond unmanageable. I would have started hooking. I would have started doing a lot of things that is not even in my thought to do today. I am very honored that the Reverend Rodney was up here to share this evening with me. I am glad that all 3 of us, Richard, Rodney, and myself, are all sober today. And I'd like to bring up the Reverend Rodney Kay from the Port at Noon group to deliver the benediction. Thank you.
One of the surprises of our fellowship is how close you and I are to a power greater than ourselves. In this fellowship, our contact with the God of our understanding is always as near as the hands on either side of us. You are invited now to reach out and make contact on your right and your left. The hands of AA reached out to us yesterday and helped us clear away the wreckage of the past. The hands of AA reached out to us today and helped us be alive and present to the joys of this moment. The hands of AA will be with us tomorrow to help us walk with dignity and to live with honesty. We have been blessed by the hands of others. May we be a blessing to those who reach out to take our hands, and together with those who have gone before us in the fellowship of the Spirit, may we all meet again and often on the road of sobriety. God bless us this night with the gifts of serenity, courage, and wisdom. And may we always be at home in the hands of God.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.